I would like to thank you so much for watching and liking my videos. Your support is what motivates me to keep creating content. My goal is 1,000 subscribers, and only you can help me reach it. If you like my videos, please subscribe and together we will reach new heights. Now let's move on to the stories. Chris had been delivering pizzas for almost 2 years, but nothing about this night felt normal. It was just past midnight when he got a call from his manager. "We've got one last order," his manager said, sounding unusually hesitant. "It's way out past Ridgeview. You okay taking it?" Chris needed the money, so he agreed, even though Ridgeview was known for its abandoned houses and overgrown lots. The address was unfamiliar, but it popped up on the GPS, a lone dot surrounded by miles of nothing. As he drove, the city lights faded, replaced by dense trees and an endless road. The further he went, the more uneasy he felt. His radio crackled with static, and the GPS began glitching, recalculating every few minutes. Finally, he arrived. The house was a decrepit 2-story structure, leaning as if it might collapse at any moment. The porch light flickered weakly. Chris killed the engine and stepped out, the sound of gravel crunching under his boots breaking the stillness. He knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. From inside, a voice called, "Come in." "Door's open." Against his better judgment, Chris pushed the door open. The smell of damp wood and decay hit him instantly. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a single bulb in the distance. "Hello?" Chris called out. No response. He placed the pizza on a nearby table and turned to leave, but just as he reached the door, he froze. A child's laughter echoed from upstairs. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but unmistakable. "Hello," he called again, louder this time. The laughter stopped. Chris told himself it was just his imagination, but as he stepped outside, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. His car, parked just moments ago, was now gone. Panic set in. He spun around, looking for any sign of movement, but the night was silent. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text message from an unknown number, "Don't leave yet. We're not done." Chris's heart pounded as he frantically typed a reply, "Who is this? What do you want?" The response came immediately, "Check the basement." He hesitated. The smart move would be to run, but where would he go without his car? Taking a deep breath, he stepped back into the house, now eerily quiet. The basement door was slightly ajar, revealing a steep set of stairs descending into darkness. He found a flashlight in the kitchen and began his descent. The basement was cold, the air thick with mildew. The beam of his flashlight swept across the room, revealing old furniture, broken tools, and a pizza box. It was the same box he had just delivered, sitting perfectly in the center of the room. As he approached, his flashlight flickered. The box was empty, but beneath it was a note scrawled in messy handwriting, "You're next." The basement door slammed shut behind him, and Chris whipped around, dropping his flashlight. Footsteps echoed above him, slow and deliberate. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. No answer. In the faint light of the dying flashlight, Chris noticed something he hadn't before, scratch marks along the walls, as if someone, or something, had clawed at them for years. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. The silence was deafening. Chris's phone buzzed again. "Look behind you." He spun around, the flashlight catching the face of a man standing mere inches away. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, and his mouth curled into a sinister grin. Chris screamed, dropping the flashlight completely. In the darkness, he felt a hand clamp onto his shoulder, pulling him backward. The next morning, the police found Chris's car abandoned on the side of the road. The house at the given address didn't exist on any records, and no one in Ridgeview reported seeing or hearing anything that night. Chris was never found. Weeks later, a new pizza driver took an order to an address near Ridgeview. As he parked his car, his phone buzzed with a text, "Welcome back, Chris. Jake was the kind of pizza delivery guy who thought he'd seen it all: wild parties, sketchy neighborhoods, and even the occasional prank order. But nothing prepared him for the night he delivered to the cabin. It was a late shift, close to 1 a.m., when the order came in: a single large pepperoni pizza, cash on delivery. The address was listed as Cabin Number 9, Lakeview Campgrounds. Jake frowned. Lakeview had been shut down for years after a series of accidents and disappearances. Must be some squatters, Jake muttered, grabbing the pizza. The drive out was long and desolate, the road winding through thick forests. His headlights barely pierced the dense fog that clung to the ground like a ghostly blanket. When he reached the campgrounds, the place was deathly quiet. Faded wooden signs marked the cabins, their paint peeling from years of neglect. Jake found Cabin Number 9 at the end of a gravel path, its windows dark and the door slightly ajar. Jake stepped onto the creaking porch and called out, "Pizza delivery." No response. He knocked, and the door swung open a bit more, revealing an empty living room. Dust covered the furniture, and cobwebs hung in every corner. But what struck Jake most was the smell, an overwhelming metallic stench, like rust or blood. He was about to leave the pizza on the porch when his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number: "Come inside. Leave it on the table." Jake froze. How did they know he was here? Against his better judgment, he stepped inside. The table was in the center of the room, under a single dangling light bulb that flickered weakly. He placed the pizza down, ready to bolt, but something on the table caught his eye: an envelope with his name written in shaky letters. His blood ran cold. Slowly, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single photo of him, standing on the porch, taken just minutes ago. Jake's heart pounded. "All right, you got me," he said aloud, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Good prank. I'm leaving." As he turned to the door, it slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. Jake spun around, but no one was there. His phone buzzed again. "You forgot the tip." Fear turned to anger. "Whoever this is, it's not funny," he shouted. His voice echoed through the empty cabin. A sound from the back room made him freeze. It was faint, like a muffled cry or a whisper. Jake's instincts screamed at him to leave, but something compelled him to move toward the noise. The hallway was narrow and dark, the air growing colder with each step. The sound grew louder, a rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against wood. Jake reached the last door, his hand trembling as he turned the knob. Inside was a small bedroom, empty except for a chair in the corner. A figure sat in the chair, its back to Jake. "Hello," he whispered. The figure didn't move. Jake stepped closer, the floorboards groaning under his weight. As he rounded the chair, he realized it wasn't a person at all. It was a mannequin, dressed in a tattered delivery uniform. On its chest was a name tag: Jake. Before he could react, the door slammed shut behind him. Jake turned, but there was no doorknob on this side. His phone buzzed again. The text read, "Welcome to the team." The light bulb flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. A week later, the pizza shop received a complaint about a delivery that never arrived. The manager called Jake's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. At Lakeview Campgrounds, a new mannequin appeared in Cabin Number 9, dressed in a delivery uniform. A fresh pizza box sat on the table, waiting for the next driver to arrive. Mike had been delivering pizzas for a local joint, Tony's Pies, for nearly a year. It wasn't glamorous, but the pay was decent, and the late-night shifts meant good tips from partygoers and night owls. One Friday night, as the clock crept past midnight, Mike was about to clock out when the phone rang. "Last one for the night," his manager, Tony, said, sliding the order slip toward him. The address was unusual: 321 Hollow Creek Road, way out in the countryside. "That place is practically off the grid," Mike muttered. Tony shrugged. The customer offered a $50 tip. "Just take it and call it a night." The promise of extra cash was enough to convince him. Mike grabbed the pizza, a large with double pepperoni, and headed out. The first 20 minutes of the drive were uneventful. The city's glow faded as he entered the rural outskirts. The GPS struggled to keep up as he wound through narrow, unlit roads flanked by dense woods. When he finally turned onto Hollow Creek Road, his headlights illuminated a crumbling sign that read, "No trespassing." The asphalt gave way to gravel, and the trees grew thicker, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. After what felt like an eternity, Mike spotted a house in the distance. It was a two-story Victorian-style building, its once white paint now peeling. Every window was dark, and the front yard was overgrown with weeds. "This better be worth $50, he muttered. Mike parked his car and grabbed the pizza. As he approached the porch, the wooden steps creaked under his weight. He knocked on the door and waited. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway. "Hello. Pizza delivery," he called out. From somewhere deeper in the house, a voice replied, "Come in." Mike hesitated. Every instinct told him to leave the pizza on the porch and walk away, but the promise of the tip, and his curiosity, pushed him forward. The hallway smelled of mildew and something else he couldn't place. The wallpaper was yellowed and peeling, and family portraits lined the walls, their subjects staring at him with lifeless eyes. "Just leave it in the kitchen," the voice called again. Mike followed the voice to a small, outdated kitchen. A single bulb flickered overhead. He placed the pizza on the counter and turned to leave, but froze when he noticed something strange. The dining table was set for 5, with plates and silverware arranged neatly. The chairs, however, were occupied by mannequins dressed in formal wear, their faces eerily lifelike. One of them held a fork as if frozen mid-meal. "What the hell?" Mike whispered, backing away. As he reached the doorway, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out to find a text from an unknown number, "Stay for dinner." Mike's stomach churned. He spun around, but the kitchen was empty. The mannequins were gone. Footsteps echoed from upstairs. "Hello," he shouted, his voice cracking. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs. Mike bolted for the front door, but it wouldn't budge. His phone buzzed again, "You're going the wrong way." He turned to see a shadowy figure standing at the base of the stairs. It was holding something, a mask. Slowly, it raised the mask to its face, revealing a mannequin-like grin. Mike's screams were cut short as the house plunged into darkness. The next morning, Tony was furious. Mike hadn't returned, and the customer from Hollow Creek Road called, complaining that their pizza never arrived. A search party was sent to the address, but the house was empty. No mannequins, no signs of a struggle, just an untouched pizza sitting on the counter. Weeks later, a new delivery driver at Tony's Pies got an order for 321 Hollow Creek Road. When he asked about the address, Tony shook his head. "Forget it," he said. "That's a dead end." Jason was used to the quiet eeriness of late-night pizza deliveries. As the most reliable driver at Benny's Pizzeria, he often took the odd, late orders no one else wanted. But something about the order that night unsettled him. It was a little after midnight when the call came in. The voice on the other end of the line was raspy and deliberate. "I'd like a large margarita pizza. Deliver it to 14 Elmwood Lane. Cash payment." Jason scribbled the address on his notepad. "Got it. Should be there in about 20 minutes. As soon as the call ended, Benny, the shop owner, glanced over. "Elmwood Lane. That place is almost abandoned. You sure you want to take it?" Jason shrugged. "It's just another delivery. Easy money." Elmwood Lane was on the outskirts of town, past a series of derelict factories and empty lots. The road was riddled with potholes, and the streetlights flickered or were completely dead. As Jason neared the address, his car's headlights illuminated the house at the end of the lane. It stood apart from the others, surrounded by a rusted iron fence. The house itself was old, with boarded-up windows and ivy crawling up its faded brick walls. Jason parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a moment. The house looked abandoned, but the porch light was on, casting an unnatural, yellow glow. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, grabbing the pizza. He walked up the cracked pathway, the sound of gravel crunching underfoot the only noise in the stillness. When he reached the door, he knocked 3 times. No answer. "Hello. Pizza delivery," he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet night. The door creaked open slightly, revealing a dark hallway. Jason hesitated, his instinct screaming at him to leave. Just as he turned to go, he heard a voice. "Come in. Leave it on the table in the living room." Jason pushed the door open wider, peering inside. The air was heavy with the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. The living room was just as eerie as the exterior of the house. Dust covered the furniture, and the wallpaper was peeling in long strips. On the coffee table, a single envelope sat propped up, labeled, "For the delivery guy." Jason placed the pizza down and reached for the envelope. Inside was $50 in cash and a handwritten note, "Wait for further instructions." Jason's pulse quickened. This was beyond weird. He stuffed the cash into his pocket and turned to leave. But as he reached the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. Jason's heart raced. He yanked at the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. He pulled out his phone to call Benny, only to find he had no signal. A low, guttural laugh echoed from deeper in the house. Jason froze. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice trembling. The laugh turned into a series of whispers, incomprehensible and overlapping, like a crowd speaking in a foreign language. Jason bolted back toward the living room, looking for another exit. The whispers followed him, growing louder and more urgent. As he reached the back of the house, he spotted a door leading to the kitchen. He ran toward it, but before he could reach it, the overhead light flickered and went out. In the darkness, something moved. He could feel it, something heavy, breathing, watching him. Jason fumbled for his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing nothing. The room was empty. But the whispers continued. Desperate, Jason spotted another door near the kitchen. He threw it open, revealing a staircase descending into a basement. "Better than staying up here," he muttered, descending cautiously. The basement was cold and smelled of mildew. The walls were lined with shelves holding jars of something unidentifiable. At the far end of the room, Jason noticed a door with a padlock. The whispers grew louder, now coming from behind the door. Jason's hands shook as he backed away. He turned to run back upstairs but froze when he saw a figure standing at the top of the staircase. It was tall and thin, its face obscured by a black hood. The figure pointed toward the locked door. "No way," Jason stammered, shaking his head. The figure stepped closer, its movements unnaturally fluid. Jason had no choice. He turned back to the door, searching for something to break the padlock. His flashlight caught a crowbar lying in the corner. Grabbing it, he pried the lock loose and pushed the door open. Inside was a small, windowless room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and in the center of the room sat a single chair. On it was another note, "You're free to go. For now." Jason didn't wait to read it twice. He bolted back upstairs, but the house was now completely silent. The whispers were gone, and the figure had disappeared. The front door was wide open. Jason sprinted to his car, jumped in, and sped away, not daring to look back. When he finally reached the pizzeria, Benny was waiting for him. "What the hell happened to you?" he asked. Jason threw the $50 onto the counter. "Don't ever send me to that address again." Benny frowned. "What address?" Jason held up the order slip, but the paper was blank. Jason quit the next day. Months later, a new driver took an order for 14 Elmwood Lane. This time, the pizza and the driver were never seen again.